For 25 years, Abraham waited for a single promise: a son. When that son finally arrived, he was told to take him up a mountain and end his life. We're diving into the psychology of the most controversial moment in ancient history, the climb up Mount Moriah. By the end, you'll understand the radical shift in Abraham's faith that changed the course of world history. But if you scroll away, you'll miss the specific detail about what Isaac actually asked his father at the base of the mountain, a question that almost breaks the entire narrative.
The greatest stories ever told are waiting for you. Subscribe to All Religious Story.
Abraham was an old man. He lived in the dry, dusty heat of Beersheba. He was a nomad, a man of tents and starlight, and for decades he had walked with a voice that only he could hear. This wasn't just some random desert traveler. This was a man who had built his entire identity on a promise. For 25 years, he waited for the miracle child, Isaac. When Isaac was finally born, he wasn't just a boy. He was the future. He was the proof that the voice in the wind hadn't been lying to him. But then one morning, the quiet of the desert broke. It wasn't a shout. It was a command that felt like a physical blow. The request was simple, blunt, and absolutely brutal. Take your son, your only son, the one you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will point out to you. There was no explanation. There was no negotiation. There was no maybe. Just a cold, hard requirement that ripped the foundation out from under his feet. Imagine waking up to that. You've spent a lifetime building a legacy, holding on to a promise, and suddenly you're told to burn it to the ground. How do you even put your boots on in the morning? How do you look your wife in the eyes and pack a bag? Abraham didn't hesitate. He didn't argue. He rose early. He saddled his donkey. He took 2 of his servants and Isaac. But wait, the craziest part of this journey is still ahead. If you've ever had to make a decision that felt impossible, drop a yes in the comments. We're talking about the raw, human side of this story. He cut the wood for the fire. He didn't leave it to someone else. He did the work himself, piece by agonizing piece. Each strike of the axe against the wood must have sounded like a heartbeat, ticking down toward the end. They set out. The journey from Beersheba to the region of Moriah wasn't a quick trip. It was 3 days. 3 days of walking through the heat, watching the dust kick up around Isaac's feet. Think about those 72 hours. This wasn't a split-second decision in the heat of the moment. It was a slow, agonizing crawl toward a destination that promised only heartbreak. Every time Abraham looked at Isaac, he saw the boy's youth, his strength, his future. And every time he looked at that future, he remembered the blade he had packed in his bag. How do you walk 3 days knowing the end of the road is the end of your world? It's a weight that would crush most people, but Abraham kept walking. His servant stayed behind at a certain point. The final climb was meant for just the 2 of them. Abraham placed the wood on Isaac's shoulders. Think about that for a second. The father making the son carry the very thing intended to consume him. They carried the fire and the knife, walking up the slope in total silence. The silence was the loudest thing in the desert. It was heavy, thick, and suffocating. Then, the moment that stops everyone in their tracks happened. Isaac, probably in his late teens, looked at his father. He was observant. He knew the drill of a sacrifice. He looked at the wood, the fire, and the blade. Then he looked at the empty space, where a lamb should have been. "Father?" he asked. The word hung in the air, trembling. "We have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the offering?" That question is the turning point. It's the moment the mask almost slips. If you're feeling the weight of this conversation, hit that like button and subscribe. We're going deeper into this than most people ever do. Abraham stopped. He looked at his son, the boy he had prayed for, waited for, and loved with every fiber of his being. He didn't lie. He didn't break down and cry. He said, "God will provide a lamb for the offering, my son." Was it a lie, or was it a prophecy? Maybe it was both. At that moment, Abraham was walking in a space between reality and a terrifying mystery. They kept climbing. The mountain loomed ahead, a jagged piece of rock against the bright blue sky. Every step was a choice. Every breath was a sacrifice. He wasn't just climbing a hill. He was walking away from his own heart. They reached the summit. It was quiet. The wind pulled at their clothes. Abraham began to build the altar. He moved with a strange, deliberate rhythm. He stacked the stones, smoothing them, arranging them. He wasn't rushing. He was making sure it was perfect, as if the care he put into the altar was the only thing keeping him from collapsing. The tension was at its absolute breaking point. He laid the wood out in order. He turned to Isaac. There was no struggle. Isaac didn't run. He didn't fight. He submitted to the hands of his father. Abraham bound him. He tied his hands and feet, the ropes biting into the skin. Can you imagine the sound of those ropes? The dry, raspy sound of the fiber against Isaac's tunic? Abraham lifted his son and placed him on top of the wood. He reached into his bag. He took the knife. His hand was trembling, but it was steady enough. He raised it. He looked at his son, the promise, the miracle, the life he had fought for. And in that second, the world held its breath. The air stopped moving. The birds stopped singing. It was just the old man, the boy, and the cold, sharp edge of the blade. He was fully committed. He was ready to let it all go. And then a voice shattered the silence. It wasn't a whisper. It was a shout that echoed across the entire mountain. "Abraham! Abraham!" He froze. The knife stayed in the air. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the voice commanded. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." The relief must have been physical, like a wave crashing over him. He dropped the knife. The sound of it hitting the stone echoed like a gunshot. He untied his son. They stood there, shaking, breathing in the thin air of the mountain. And then he looked over. A ram was caught in the thicket by its horns. God had provided. The substitute was there. They offered the ram. The smoke rose into the sky, carrying the scent of burning wood and the memory of what almost happened. They turned and started the walk back down. Can you imagine that descent? The walk up was filled with dread. But the walk down? It had to be filled with a silence that was entirely different. It wasn't the silence of secrets. It was the silence of people who had looked into the abyss and come back changed. The relationship between them was never going to be the same. How could it be? They had shared something so deep, so traumatic, and so holy that no one else in the world would ever understand it. Isaac walked beside his father, a man who had been seconds away from taking his life, yet who had also been the one to protect him from the very beginning. Think about the cost of that faith. People talk about faith like it's a feeling or a belief. But for Abraham, faith was a knife in his hand. It was the willingness to let go of the thing he loved most because he trusted the source of the promise more than the promise itself. It's easy to love when everything is going right. It's easy to be faithful when the sky is clear. But what happens when the sky goes dark? What happens when you're asked to let go of the very thing that makes your life worth living? That is the question of Moriah. It's not about a sacrifice that almost happened. It's about the surrender of the heart. Abraham learned that the thing he loved, his son, wasn't his to keep. It was a gift. And because he was willing to give it back, he was able to keep it in a way that was deeper than before. He stopped being a man who owned his future and became a man who was owned by the one who gave it. Most people look at this story and see a test. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was a transformation. It was the moment Abraham stopped being a nomad and became a father of nations. He had to lose his son in his heart before he could truly be his father in reality. Does that make sense? It's a painful lesson, but it's a profound one. We all have our own mountains. We all have our own Isaac, the thing we cherish, the thing we rely on, the thing we're terrified to lose. Maybe it's a career, a dream, a person, or even our own identity. We carry our wood. We climb our paths. And sometimes we reach a point where we have to ask if we're holding those things too tightly. Are we willing to set them on the altar? Are we willing to trust that if we let go, there will be something waiting in the thicket? It's a terrifying prospect. It's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the mountain isn't there to destroy us. Maybe it's there to clear the view. Look at the geography. Beersheba was low, a place of survival. Moriah was high, a place of perspective. To get from one to the other, you have to climb. You have to endure the 3-day trek. You have to leave the servants behind. You have to leave the comforts of the lowlands and face the raw, unvarnished truth of your own soul. Abraham didn't know the end of the story when he started the climb. He didn't know about the ram. He didn't know about the voice. He only knew the command. And yet, he moved forward. He didn't hesitate. That's the kind of courage that defines a person's entire life. It's not the absence of fear. It's the presence of a commitment that is bigger than fear. Sometimes we think that if we do everything right, we'll be spared the climb. We think that if we're good people, we won't have to face the hard questions. But life doesn't work like that. The mountains are there for everyone. The question isn't whether you'll have to climb, but what you'll do when you reach the top. Will you hold on to your knife? Or will you be willing to lay it down? It's the ultimate human challenge. It's the moment where we decide if we are our own gods or if we belong to something much, much bigger. The story of Abraham and Isaac has been told for thousands of years, but it never gets old because it's always happening. It's happening in homes, in hospitals, in quiet moments of reflection, and in the darkest nights of the soul. It's a story about the fragility of life. One moment you have everything, and the next you're standing over an altar with a knife in your hand. And yet there is grace, even in the middle of the terror. There is grace. The ram in the thicket is the proof that even when we think we've lost everything, there is a provision we didn't see coming. We spend so much time looking at the knife that we miss the thicket. We focus so much on the sacrifice that we miss the grace. But maybe that's why we need to keep telling this story. It reminds us to look up. It reminds us to trust the voice that calls us by name. It reminds us that even the hardest climb has a destination, and that destination is not the end of the story. Abraham walked down that mountain a different man. He had seen the heart of God, and he had seen his own heart too. He knew that he was capable of anything, and he knew that he was held by a grace that was even more capable. That's the legacy he left behind. Not just a line of descendants, but a way of living that puts everything on the line. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this: don't be afraid of the mountain. The climb is where you find out who you really are. The climb is where you find out what you're really made of. And the climb is where you find out that the God who asks for everything is the same God who provides everything. It's a heavy story. It's a story that sticks to your ribs. It's a story that makes you want to go home and hug the people you love. Because at the end of the day, we are all just travelers on a 3-day journey. We are all carrying our wood. We are all heading toward a destination we can't fully see. And we are all waiting for the voice to call our name. When you get to the top, what will you do? Will you be the person who holds on, or the person who lets go? It's a question that everyone has to answer for themselves. And it's a question that doesn't have an easy answer. It's a question that you live out, step by step, breath by breath, day by day. The story of Abraham isn't just an ancient tale. It's a mirror. When you look into it, you don't just see a man on a mountain. You see yourself. You see your own fears, your own loves, your own sacrifices, and your own hopes. You see the things you're willing to fight for and the things you're willing to surrender. And that's why it's the most important story in history. It's the story of how we learn to love. Because real love isn't about possession. It's about release. It's about trusting that the thing you love is in the best hands possible, even if those hands aren't your own. It's about understanding that the ultimate act of faith is not controlling the outcome, but trusting the author. So the next time you feel like you're climbing a mountain, remember Abraham. Remember the fire, the wood, and the silence. Remember the voice that stops the blade. And remember that you are never walking alone. Even when the journey feels impossible, even when the task feels too heavy to bear, there is someone walking with you. The mountain of Moriah is a place of shadows, but it's also a place of light. It's a place where things die, but it's also a place where things are born. It's a place of endings, but it's also a place of new beginnings. It's a place where we realize that our life is not our own. And that's the most beautiful thing of all. Think about the silence at the base of the mountain again. Think about the way the wind moved through the trees. Think about the way the sun hit the rocks. It was a world that was waiting for a decision. And that decision changed everything. What if Abraham had said no? What if he had turned around? What if he had decided that the promise was too much to give up? The history of the world would be different. The legacy of faith would look completely different. But he didn't. He chose to trust. He chose to climb. He chose to be the man who was willing to let go. And because of that, he opened a door that can never be closed. He showed us that the heart is capable of incredible things when it's anchored in something eternal. He didn't just walk up a mountain. He walked into a mystery. And he walked out with a new understanding of what it means to be human. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a witness. He was a witness to the fact that there is a power in the universe that is greater than our deepest fears and our greatest loves. We spend our lives trying to secure our future. We build our houses. We save our money. We nurture our relationships. We protect our children. And all that is good. But we have to remember that none of it is ours to keep. We are stewards, not owners. And sometimes the ultimate test of our stewardship is the willingness to let go. It's the hardest lesson to learn. It's the lesson that takes a lifetime. And it's the lesson that we're constantly being tested on. Every time we face a loss, every time we face a change, every time we're asked to let go of a dream, we're back on the mountain, we're back at the altar. We're back with the wood and the fire. And the choice is still the same. Are we going to hold on, or are we going to trust? It's a simple question, but it's the most difficult one in the world. It's a question that defines the very essence of our humanity. It's a question that connects us to the people who walked these same paths thousands of years ago. We are all connected by our mountains. We are all connected by our sacrifices. We are all connected by our need for grace. And that's why this story matters. It's not a relic of the past. It's a blueprint for the future. It's a reminder of who we are and who we can become if we're willing to walk the path. So don't be afraid to keep walking. Don't be afraid to keep climbing. Don't be afraid to face the things that scare you. Because the mountain is where the transformation happens. The mountain is where the truth is revealed. And the mountain is where the provision is found. Maybe you're at the bottom of the mountain right now. Maybe you're just starting your 3-day journey. Maybe you're feeling the weight of the wood on your shoulders. If so, know that you're not alone. Abraham walked this path, and he's not the only one. Every person who has ever dared to hope, every person who has ever dared to trust, has walked this same ground, and they've all found the same thing. They've found that the God who calls us is also the God who sustains us. They've found that the path might be steep, but it's always leading somewhere. They've found that the sacrifice might be painful, but it's always leading to a greater purpose. So keep going. Keep climbing. Keep trusting. Keep letting go. Because at the end of the journey, you'll find that you haven't lost anything at all. You've only gained a deeper, richer, and more profound understanding of what it means to be alive. You've only gained a piece of the story that is still being written. And that is a journey worth taking. It's a journey that starts with a single step, a single breath, a single choice. It's a journey that never really ends. Because the mountain is always there, and the call